Angie, what do people misunderstand about the brain? What are some misconceptions?
People misunderstand or misconceive that you are kind of beholden to what you're born with, right? I feel like so often when it comes to things neurological or mental health, like, oh, I am anxious, right? We also claim it. I'm anxious, I have depression, I have ADD, thus that is just what I am beholden to, right? But just like your body and your muscles, your brain's an organ, it's not a muscle, but it can be flexed and can be changed. And I think that people just don't really understand the concept of that, so they feel very trapped in what they have.
Yeah, so I think what you're trying to say is we misidentify our personality for actually conditioning.
Absolutely. Yeah, and
so
is
dig into
that
how we've conditioned ourselves into identifying with these things that we think are just, we don't realize they're malleable.
That's exactly right. So knowing, right, especially if we've dealt with something, let's say early on childhood, right? Like I've always been a little bit anxious. I haven't really slept well, whatever. Probably, when we're talking about training, people deal with limiting beliefs as well. I've always been heavy. I've never been fit. I'm not a runner. I'm not a whatever that is that you identify with. That's a really hard hurdle to overcome, to go, oh, wait a second, that's absolutely something within my capability to change, right? It's just about having the tools in which to do that. And there's so many different tools that we can use, right? I mean, obviously we use brain mapping and neurofeedback as a tool. Is it the only tool? No, there's so many other tools that we can utilize to help shape and to help change our neurological patterns. We just don't even know kind of what's available to us.
Yeah, it's one of the little adages I use is that, if we fight for our weaknesses, we get to keep them. And so when we have people come into the gym and they say they're not a runner or they're not a this or they're not a this, it's like, show me your 23andMe to where you, your father, your grandpa, and your grandpa's like, you guys just weren't runners. You didn't have this other gene. So give us a little background on exactly what you do and like what is brain mapping, what is Braincode? Start from the beginning.
Yeah. And you are exactly right. I have that conversation with people. Like if you've already decided that you are incapable of change, I'll hear that conversation in consults, right? Like, hey, nothing ever works for me, but I guess I'll try this. I'm like, then this probably isn't going to work for you. Have already decided.
Whenever I had this conversation yesterday on the drive back from Grand Canyon is, what did you just say? I'm sorry, I totally lost it there.
About limiting beliefs, right? And about, having already identified that you can't overcome whatever it is. Like you've already decided this is not something that you can do or you're willing to give up.
Yeah, I lost it. Go ahead.
That's right.
We'll cut that out. I totally lost it. I'm operating. We'll talk about sleep.
I've seen your brain map.
We'll talk about sleep in a minute. I got about 4.5 hours sleep because I just got in last night. But yeah, proceed.
And probably also expended, a lot of energy in what you did. Maybe running on zero.
Neurologically
depleted.
Suppressed right now is how I would describe it. Yeah.
So brain mapping and neurofeedback, what Braincode Centers does, a brain map is a quantitative electroencephalogram, similar to a SPECT image or like an EEG, in that we're looking at all of the electrical and neurological wave activity happening in the brain. It's a baseline assessment tool, right? If someone goes into the gym, they need to do some kind of fitness assessment for us to even see what is your movement like, what's your fitness level like, right? What are we dealing with? And that really is, a brain map is the ability for us to take an internal look and see, okay, what's going on? What are you firing? What's happening neurologically? And then we can create individualized protocols for that person in order to physiologically create new neural pathways, like a training program, right? Okay, we're gonna work on the parietal lobe, here's what's happening there. The occipital lobe, here's what's happening there. And everything that we're doing is truly reward-based training. It's operant conditioning of the brain. We're not putting any stimulus in. We're teaching the brain to create new neural pathways on its own and ultimately committing those to permanency. So unlike muscle, right? Muscle, we know, hey, we build it and then it is easier to maintain, right? You don't have to work as hard when you're maintaining as you do when you're building. Your brain is going to constantly be maintaining that pattern after we create it. So once we put in the hard work, now your brain is utilizing that and maintaining that all the time.
So in a language that my, third grade reading level can kind of understand. So the way I understand, I did my brain mapping with you guys like 4 or 5 years ago, and it was absolutely incredible. I learned a lot about the patterns that I've had, and it answered a lot of questions for me. But the way I see it and the way I interpret it is like at any given time, like who's driving the machine? When you talk about the different waves of the brain. So kind of go into detail. I know mine, you can break it down if you'd like. Mine was, I had very high beta activity, hypervigilance, a lot of the stuff that from growing up moved around a lot, and how from that, like the hypervigilance served me in a lot of areas. It made me a really great coach because I pay attention to everything. But then that also leads to an inability to relax.
Yeah.
No place ever really feels like home. I'm just constantly scanning. So go into detail about maybe the specific waves, what you guys find, and then maybe try to play with that metaphor of like who's driving, like who's in charge at any given time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So all humans are capable of producing the same brainwave activity. We have delta waves, which are like deep, slow, restorative relaxation sleep waves. So if or when you're in the best part of sleep, the brain produces super slow moving delta. Theta is kind of a drifting into sleep wave where we're not fully asleep, but we're not fully awake, almost a daydreamy type place. Alpha wave activity is a receptor. So alpha is going to be like a bridge. It helps push our brain up into the fast. It moves it into the slow. Too much or too little alpha, and we tend to feel extremely stuck. Like either I'm so stuck in the fast, my brain is racing, I can't shut it off, or I feel really stuck in the slow. I'm kind of foggy, lethargic, why can't I get my brain up and working? Beta should be clean, focused, motivational, fresh cup of coffee in the morning energy. Too much and we're overstimulated, too little and we tend to be undermotivated. High beta is fight or flight, anxiety, irritability, defense mechanisms, hypervigilance. It's a very uncomfortable place for us to be, and also a very common thing that our society deals with, right? You really shouldn't be producing high beta unless you're in danger. But if you're trying to go to sleep at night, if you're trying to work your job and your brain is lit up with fast wave activity, that's really never going to serve you well, nor is it going to feel particularly comfortable, right? That's going to be, like you talked about, that place of kind of hypervigilance. And you're exactly right. That's what we're looking at in the brain, is kind of who is the driver, right? Who is the wave that is speaking over all of the other waves and kind of trumping everybody? Everybody has somebody that's doing that, right? Somebody who has extra theta, extra slow wave activity. That's going to be your classic kind of ADHD, inattentive, right? Hard time staying focused, kind of feeling scattered, 50 tabs open but doesn't complete any tasks, right? Versus your high beta, right? Somebody like that is going to be actually, and I know this is part of your kind of history, is a first responder pattern, right? Somebody who's like, hey, I am alert at all times, right? Like I'm sitting in the corner in a restaurant so I can scan everything because I need to know, what's happening and who's coming in and what's going on. I'm having a conversation with you.
Never have your back turned to the front door.
That's right,
ever.
yeah.
Nope.
I'm having a conversation with you. I've heard the other 50 conversations happening around us. I could tell you so-and-so over there is having a breakup right now. And I'm going, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? Because your brain is so alert that it's hearing all of those things. Neither of which is like bad or good, right? It just is. It comes down to what's serving you well and what's not serving you well. Having some hypervigilance, that probably keeps you safe. Having too much, do you ever attach to other people? Do you ever relax ever? Can you ever just have a chill down day? What does that even look like for you? So that's really what we're exploring, is like, okay, if this one area is serving you well, having a little bit extra, great. That's not necessarily a pain point. But having way, way, way too much is so under-focused.
Yeah, one of the themes we use with our guys, like, does your state match your environment? Like, it's okay there are times, even in the gym, we get people ramped up, ready to run through a wall, right? Upregulation, they're moving weights, everything's very intense. And then we just send them out into the wild. And they get in their car, they go 80 miles per hour to Whole Foods. They're impatient waiting in line because they're super ramped up. So how often are people kind of confusing, don't want to necessarily go back to like the personality aspect, but are we over-labeling symptoms and pathologies and sickness with everyone's anxious and all of these disorders? Or can a lot of this, just by building some awareness around how you're feeling, respiratory drive, are there cues that people can get? It's like, oh, I'm in this state and now I need to change state.
We are way over labeling. So he used to be the director of the National Institute for Mental Health. Thomas Insel was highly criticized because he said the DSM-5, right, which is for counselors, that's our ability to diagnose, has a lot of reliability, right? Okay, there's a lot of consistency with diagnosis. He said there's very little validity. So we have a lot of consistency with diagnosis. We have no ability to actually say, is this a specific neurological, biological pattern, right? We would never diagnose somebody with diabetes without taking a freaking look at your insulin and your blood sugar. We wouldn't just go, oh, you're feeling a little lightheaded? Probably diabetes, right? Versus you go to somebody for mental health and you say, yeah, I feel a little X, Y, and Z. This, and this. Here's your diagnosis. Here's your, prescription of medication. So we do over-identify with these diagnostic terms and go, this is what I am, this is it. That's not necessarily one neurological pattern. That could be like 50 different neurological patterns. Now, the hard thing about mental health is that we also have, as a culture, the idea that we can turn it off and on, right? Oh, you're feeling anxious? Just quit it, right? Well, just down-regulate. And then I look at the brain and go, this is the 100% driver in your brain. So the idea that this is some kind of a switch that you can turn on and off is probably, not real, not realistic for you. However, that's where, we neurofeedback, different modalities can teach you how to have flexibility. Because it's not that we should never have access to that. If you are being chased by a bear, high beta is pretty critical to tell you, oh my God, like get the heck out of here. But if you're trying to go to sleep at night, totally unnecessary and detrimental.
Yeah. How long have they been doing, because obviously we've had a lot of changes in modern technology, a lot of changes in lifestyle.
Yeah.
Everybody feels stressed to the gills. Everybody prides themselves on their efficiency and getting all 80 things on their checklist done. How long have they been doing QEEG? What's the history? Like, how far back does this go?
Yeah, QEEG started in like the 50s. I mean, this is, old technology. I've literally been asked, like, did you create neurofeedback? Wouldn't that be sick? No, absolutely. like, really? You think that I'm like capable of that? No, neurofeedback started in like the 1950s, right? And we were doing, and there's a lot of different types of brain scans, right? We know that MRIs, CTs, there's a lot of different. Specifically, a QEEG is an electrical neurological scan, right? We're looking at all of the electrical wave activity happening. And one of the founders of kind of neurofeedback and QEEG was doing these different experiments on cats because we were finding out that, basically we were doing a lot of animal testing. I know that, that's not really allowed anymore, but back
Don't
in
let the monkey put the lipstick on.
That's right. Yeah. Back in the day, you could kind of do whatever you wanted. And we found out that when you were putting basically a radio frequency of alpha into these very feral cats' brains, we could basically turn a feral cat into like a house pet, a docile house pet. We also found out that because these different astronauts, there was another study being done, these astronauts were having a lot of negative effects from rocket fuel. So we were doing testing on cats, basically, oh gosh, we have to protect our astronauts. We found that several of the cats that had been introduced to alpha frequency neurofeedback were not showing any signs of the disorientation from the rocket fuel. So they're actually kind of immune to that. So we basically figured out, oh my gosh, by training brain waves, we can change states. We can teach the brain and strengthen the brain. And that's really where it started. Now, I would say probably in the last 30 years, there's been a lot higher efficacy. We have a lot more research studies and whatnot. Back in the 50s, 40s, it was like, it works because it works. And in the scientific community, that means absolutely nothing.
The anecdote tends to precede the actual research in almost all cases, right?
Yeah. Is it, kind of qualitative, quantitative data. And so we really have a lot more quantitative evidence now to say, okay, actually, this is why it works. And before and after brain maps, I mean, people love proof of change, right? If you go to a counselor, there's nothing wrong with counseling. I believe in it. I am a counselor. For 6 years, you are the determination of if that has worked, right? Like, how do you feel? How do you experience yourself? All those things. A before and after brain map is hard to argue with. Like, you had this amount of wave activity before, you have this amount now. What did you change neurofeedback? Okay, then we can see the data change there.
Yeah. So when you are, how much does environmental factors, whether it's relationships, jobs you don't like how many of these things are influencing us into, I don't know when to say underperform, but living like less fulfilling lives. To where we do think it's just something wrong with us. How many people are mistaking some type of diagnosis or symptoms with just being in an environment that isn't conducive for who they are or what they want to be doing? How often is that misinterpreted? And is that ever something you guys go into when you're doing your counseling, as far as finding what the triggers are that are putting the brain into that?
So my answer to that is kind of twofold, right? Like, let's say you grew up in a situation that was maybe unsafe emotionally, physically, whatever that is. You probably grew up around a dysregulated nervous system, right? Your brain and your body are telling you like, hey, this is the regular, right? So feeling hypervigilant and stressed out and scared and whatever, that's what you grew up with. So that is your baseline. That is what you know. So then we're not confused why, okay, as an adult, you're probably in maybe a dysregulating relationship, right? That you're with somebody who, yeah, it's a little bit unhealthy. Yeah, maybe a little bit abusive, whatever that is. But like, hey, my body is telling me this is the norm and this is what feels good. Well, yeah, I'm super stressed out at work and, I'm working 80-hour weeks or whatever, but hey, this is kind of what you got to do. This is a very normal feeling. So that type of situation, you're probably creating it and you have decided that that's your normalcy because of how you were raised. We also, like you said, live in hustle culture. We are such an interesting culture of people that it's like, you slept 5 hours, I slept 4.
Yeah.
Oh, you ate, you forgot to eat yesterday, I haven't eaten in 3 days.
Pain Olympics.
Like,
yeah,
like
pain Olympics.
what are we competing against? Like, you're super unhealthy, I'm worse. That's what a weird.
You think that's bad.
Yeah, you think that's bad. Let me tell you how much worse mine is, like whatever that is. You work 90 hours, I worked 120. Not enough hours in the day. So there's also a keeping up with the Joneses, like culture of that creates, just deterioration within our brains and in our bodies. So maybe you grew up in a, let's say healthy, right? What defines healthy environment, but you are so almost like manipulatively overly motivated where it's never enough. And that next level and that next level and that next level. We see that in fitness, right? More fitness competitions, more workout, more lifting, breaking my back. What's the average lifespan of a bodybuilder? It's like 45 years old.
Yeah. Right.
So I think it's probably twofold, but you're exactly right that we also create environments staring at our phones till the second we go to bed, and then we wonder why we have, an issue sleeping. We eat highly processed foods all the time and then wonder why we have, brain fog 24/7. It's twofold.
So how much do you guys look into the gut at all with interaction and how it influences the brain? Do you guys get into diet as well?
So this is where we have partnerships with places like Arsenal, right? Where we go, hey, we are the brain experts. That's, I'm kind of a stay in your lane, right? That, if somebody were to come to me and be like, Angie, will you create a training fitness program for them? I'd be like, I won't be doing that for you, no. Because what works for me probably will not work for you, and also you will probably hate it because it's for me, and I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and my fitness is not everybody's cup of tea. I'm not a gut expert. Now, I know that the gut-brain connection is so interconnected and critical that if someone comes in and we're talking and we're going to do a very deep intake, one, I can see inflammation markers in the brain, oxygenated stress, all these other things show up in different patterning. I regularly am like, hey, when was the last time you had some blood work done? It would not surprise you, people saying never. Yeah. Or, well, a couple of years ago at my, annual fitness or whatever, or my annual, appointment with my primary care, but everything was good. I'm like, could you tell me, any of
what is good? Because I've seen plenty of GPs to where their good is
what is your good? You're not morbidly obese and you don't have like pre-diabetes at 35, so you're set?
Yeah. There's a difference between health and like actual performance, right?
Absolutely.
Health, so much of it's just predicated on, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not going to die in the next 12 months. We'll see you again next year.
Yeah. Or today. Like, hey, this looks a little concerning. But like, our gauge of what's actually healthy, that's like, looking at the BMI. What gauge are we even talking about? We're not looking at muscle. So I never, a lot of people, even, women in their early 40s, when was the last time you had a hormone panel done? I don't know. So we don't have those data markers. So I'm going to go, okay, I'm going to stay in my lane. Why don't you go to somewhere like Arsenal, like a functional med, like somebody else? Let's get some blood work done. Let's take a look at what's going on there. Because if you have some really dysregulated hormones, neurofeedback's not magic. Sure. I'm not going to go in and fix your pituitary gland somehow. So if there's other things happening, we need to bring in other people that they are the expert. Health is always a series of puzzle pieces. It would be sick if it was a silver bullet. It's just not.
Sure. Can you out-discipline a dysregulated nervous system?
That is, I honestly feel like probably, I don't know why I felt you just like personally spoke to Angie. Like on that, I'm like, can you, Angie? Have you? No, the answer is no, right? That you can be super disciplined. You cannot, that is my superpower. I am probably the most disciplined person, just like that is my superpower. No, you can't out-discipline a dysregulated nervous system because it's not happening on a thought-based level versus discipline is happening on a thought-based level, right? That I'm putting patterns in place, right? I want to start going to the gym. What starts with going to the gym? Waking up, putting your shoes on, getting a little workout fit, driving to the gym. Maybe you don't even go in, but okay, you started the pattern.
Sure.
Versus a dysregulated nervous system is happening on that deeper down, like neurological level, and it's not thought-based. It's very automatic. The brain is taking the path of least resistance. Now, one might argue that if you are so disciplined that you start doing very wellness-oriented box breathing in the morning, grounding, sunlight first thing in the morning, can you start to reorient your nervous system? You can. So honestly, it would take a lot. It would take a lot of discipline. It would take a lot of time. Do I believe that people are capable of that? Yes. Do I believe that people are disciplined enough to write it out? Because this is not the Amazon Prime tomorrow morning on my doorstep. This is, let's say 6 months to a year of everyday, relentless discipline to change that pattern. Is it possible?
But also it would have to do a lot with, are they doing the right things? Because everybody I work with, they all have their morning routine, and a lot of it for a long time has just been autonomous. They're no longer even present for it. And it's like, is this even serving you anymore? So are the interventions where I think a lot of people get confused with trying to upregulation, downregulation, trying to control this, is they're using the wrong interventions. So that might not, based on what you guys would actually find if you looked under the hood, they may be doing all of these things that social media is telling them is good that worked for somebody else, but it's not what they need.
Yeah, that's the hard thing, right, about wellness across the board, is that there's this one supplement that that glutathione for everybody. If you don't have a super congested liver, why are you, chugging a bunch of glutathione every day? If I take melatonin. Okay, is now, did you actually need more melatonin, or are you, shedding your brain with blue light up until the second you go to bed at night, and your brain has no idea that it's actually nighttime anymore? So do you have a melatonin issue, or do you have a screen time issue? But honestly, reflecting back, really extreme discipline might be able to change a dysregulated nervous system. It would be about making sure that you're doing all the things to heal the type of dysregulated nervous system that you have.
Yeah, so we talk about, obviously we can't have this conversation without getting into the technology. The phone use, the late work emails. Matthew Walker, I've read a lot. I've been a big fan of Matthew. All of my athletes, Matthew Walker was the author of Why We Sleep, and it scared the shit out of me, from somebody who did shift work in the military forever, pride myself on being up for 30 hours traveling. And so I made my dad read it. I made everybody in my family read it. And a lot of he's actually changed his stance on some things when it comes to sleep regarding, and you can probably talk about this a little in greater depth, but melatonin just kind of brings everybody to the start line of sleep, and then it does its thing. And he was saying that oftentimes what's been mistaken for, obviously you don't want blue light right to the dome before you go to bed, but how distracting the phone is to the brain, to where oftentimes it's the notion of looking at your phone or even having your phone close is calling your attention, and that's oftentimes what leads to restlessness at night and ability to sleep. So how much is technology just completely overtaking the human experience?
It's unbelievable. There's a book called Glow Kids. It talks about the technology addiction in America, and it compares the brains of children addicted to technology to adults addicted to cocaine. They look extremely similar. So one, right, our youth, and I can't even get into that because that's a whole different situation, right? That, you and I didn't grow up with computers in the school. And if you did, it was like computer lab time, right? You went and you spent 15 minutes, I have no idea, typing.
Playing Oregon Trail and Frogger and
And then you went home and unless you were filthy wealthy, you didn't have a PlayStation or anything like that. You were playing friggin' outside, or you got on, AOL for 15 minutes and, clogged up the phone line to message the people you just saw 15 minutes ago. Otherwise, you didn't have phones, you didn't have screens, you were getting hurt outside. That's what you were doing. Versus now, we are so distracted. And it gets into what it's doing to our brain on a neurological level, which is overstimulation, right? We are constantly flooding our brain. There's a book called Dopamine Nation. One of the most impactful books I've ever read. It talks a lot about addiction. And if you haven't struggled with, let's say, traditional drug addiction or alcohol addiction, you're like, oh, that doesn't really relate. everybody has a dopamine addiction. Our culture is absolutely being overtaken by a dopamine epidemic where we constantly are inundated with dopamine all the time, right? A like on your pic, posting, whatever that is, I want it now, I want it more. That when we don't constantly have that, we are seeking it like addicts, right? I need more, I want more, how do I get more? And then our brain naturally is producing less because it's producing too much. So it keeps pulling back. So we need a bigger hit to produce what we were able to produce before. So you're absolutely right that on probably 15 different levels, technology is hurting us, right? That we have more and more and more information and access to mental health than ever before in human history, and we are somehow sicker.
Yeah. So as somebody who wants, I'm sure a lot of us have been there where we pride ourselves on our ability to multitask and, juggle 5 different things at one time. And now we're finding we're losing our ability to actually focus and do deep work.
Yeah.
So speak a little bit about where you guys find people who come in with that inability to focus, how potentially brain mapping and find this out. Like, what is the mechanism of focus, flow, deep work, stuff like that, and what would be some guidelines around how somebody can not use technology to help them out in those situations?
So when it comes to focus, right, one, that's why we do a brain map, because your inability to focus might be a totally different pattern to my inability to focus. Probably is. If you've seen a brain map, you've seen a brain map, that they are all literally completely different. So we have to differentiate between why is your brain actually having a hard time focusing? Is it producing too much low wave activity so it's not actually picking things up? Is it producing way too much where it's just not even able to focus on anything because it has 1,000 tabs open? Why is that? So that's the first thing that we're going to do is figure out why are you actually having a hard time focusing. Also, I am a multitasker. I can do a lot of, different things at the same time, completing tasks. I have like a faster processing speed. So my brain is kind of geared to doing that. Is that the right way? Do we want to do that where we have 50 tabs open and we're doing 100 different things? I did a consultation with an 18-year-old who literally the first words out of his mouth were, I just need the ability to multitask. I need to do 100 different things at once. And I'm going, but why? Why do you need to do that? What if you could do 5 things really well, then 100 things half-ass? Like that, is that really the goal? So we need to figure out why that's happening and then tailor everything that you're doing, whether it's neurofeedback, whether it's tasks, whether it's, kind of different modalities that you're doing at home to be able to do that. Bilateral stimulation tapping, box breathing, puzzling is a big one. It's working in the hippocampus and teaching your brain to truly hold on to things memory-wise better, right? Increase cognition and focus. So it just totally depends. But yes, we're going to create a individualized plan around your brain, why your brain is having a hard time doing that, so that we can start to overcome those things.
How important is exercise to brain health?
Critical. I believe that exercise, there's a difference between fitness and wellness, a very big difference. I know a lot of people who are very, very fit who are very unwell, right? That they're, all the trash protein powder and, trash bars and whatever. Not all bars and not all protein powder is trash. A lot are and have tons of additives and fillers and, all this stuff. But you look on the outside so good, on the inside, I don't even know what's probably going on, right? But actual fitness, so if we're talking about not extreme one way or the other, but we're talking about exercise, cardio for your, vascular system, for your heart. We're talking about lifting for your bones and for your muscles and for your brain. We're talking about going outside, right, and doing fitness. A walk inside on a treadmill is very different than a walk outside just for your neurological health. I believe it is an absolute critical component, just like sleep. Sure. Now, sleep is probably
my next question was going to be sleep.
Sleep's the number one.
Yeah.
Sleep is the number one longevity, health, wellness, mental health. Like if I could hammer anything in, I know that we're seed oils, all the things, which I know I said that sarcastically. I also believe in no seed. I also believe in no seed oils. If everybody in the world could change one thing, I would have them prioritize sleep, nothing else. Yeah. That if it's hey, it's one or bust, it is sleep. And that is getting 8 to 9 hours of sleep. That I know people, well, what if I get 6? Get more. I'm sorry, get more. That is the one thing. There's literally areas and valves in your brain that only open up and detox during certain aspects of sleep. So if you're only getting 4 hours, 6 hours, and it's fragmented and you go to bed at a different time every night and whatever, your brain is literally not detoxing, that you're building up plaque in your brain. Also, sleep medication. So I've actually been on probably a multi-year journey of getting off sleep aids. I've never been on a heavy prescribed sleep medication, but I have been on antihistamines for a long time. And we know there is a very heavy correlation between antihistamines and dementia. And when I started reading that research...
With like H1, H2 blockers, Pepcid, Zyrtec, like what maybe I'm...
Unisom, hydroxyzine.
Okay.
Yeah, so yes, I mean, if you're taking an antihistamine all antihistamines are kind of created pretty equal, but there's a lot of sleep aids. And the reason they work is they are antihistamines, that we have histamine intolerances or histamine spikes at night, so it helps us go to sleep and then stay asleep. And because something like Unisom, you can take it while pregnant, it must be safer. Abso-freaking-lutely not, right? That maybe in the moment it's safer, it doesn't have as many side effects right now, but if you have dementia at 65, is that safer?
Yeah.
And so I've been going through a process of weaning off and getting off those sleep meds, and that is freaking hard. It takes a lot of work. It takes a ton of discipline. It sucks, and I absolutely understand why people just stay on sleep meds forever, because they're like, well, sleep is more important. What if you're not actually sleeping? What if you're just getting knocked out, right? And for these really, really heavy sleep medications that are like heavily prescribed, you're not actually sleeping. You're literally blacking out and waking up, which is why you're still tired, which is why you're still foggy, all these things, but you're getting sleep. You're not getting any type of quality sleep.
I've talked to a lot of clients who would use, obviously we're in Colorado, so cannabis is legal.
Yeah.
And people that would have to have, a couple drinks when they come home from work.
Of course, yeah.
And so go into, obviously we know sleep is critical,
yeah.
But go into how all these other interventions, well, number one, what side effects do these interventions have if somebody was using cannabis or any of its, derivatives, or having a couple drinks after work to relax? How do those affect sleep, quality sleep? And then what type of rituals or interventions can people put in place to begin to groom the body and the mind? Like, okay, it's time to sleep, so now we're going to start shutting it down naturally.
Yeah. As someone who used to have a really, a very insomnia sleep problem, I can absolutely understand that you will do anything to get sleep, right? And so there is no friggin' judgment. That I get why you're taking a sleep aid or smoking a joint before you go to bed or having a couple drinks. I get it. It's not the answer, and it's detrimental. Period. End of discussion. You're not getting good sleep. You're getting dysregulated, fragmented sleep. So that's not the answer, but I understand why it's happening. So each of these things kind of affect the brain differently, right? So cannabis affects the brain by creating alpha slowing in the prefrontal cortex. So truly, when you talk about, the pothead who seems slow, you're absolutely destroying your prefrontal cortex, which is your executive functioning, right? The way in which your brain makes decisions. So, sleep aside, you are quite literally eating your brain and destroying your brain. So I could talk about that all day long. So that is a really hard thing, as well as, people talk about, well, it's not addictive. What? Have you ever met somebody who on the twice a year I have a little puff away?
Right, yeah.
I meet very few people. Most people who I talk about, who I talk to, it's possible. And if you smoke a joint twice a year, peace be with you.
Sure.
But more so I talk to people who use it as their end all, I have to smoke when I'm stressed out. I smoke before I go to sleep. I smoke to have a good time. Okay, so you absolutely are addicted to that. Alcohol, as we know, is a downer, right? So that's creating a whole bunch of other issues, but it's down-regulating your nervous system. And that's why you're using it to down-regulate to go to bed. I have this conversation. We work a ton with first responders across Colorado and the United States. And I meet so many first responders who are I wouldn't even think about trying to go to bed with not being 3 deep whiskey.
Yeah.
And I get it, because I look at your brain and understand that we need to teach your brain to downregulate by itself. One, so you don't have a problem with alcohol, first and foremost.
Right.
Probably let's get you sober to begin with. Yeah. As alcohol over time is going to literally destroy your brain, right? Pickle your brain. And you can't unpickle that cucumber, right? When that's done, that's done. So let's get you sober to begin with. But then adding neurofeedback in, right, to help regulate your brain in a way that now we're not constantly needing to put something synthetic in to do to our brain what our brain's not able to do on its own.
So walk me through the neurofeedback process. So somebody comes in, they get their mapping. and you put a paper in front of them and say, here's your brain. Yeah. What happens after that?
Yeah, so we're absolutely going to walk through, right, like we did. Hey, here's what I'm seeing in your brain. Here's what's going on, neurological patterns. I'm very big on education. I don't want, to bring someone in and be like, your brain's got issues, let's heal it. And they're like, okay, I guess I just trust you. No, don't blindly trust me. Let me explain to you what's going on and how we're going to change that, right? And then the actual neurofeedback process is probably between 6 to 9 months. I'd say let's start with 6. If people are coming in person, they're doing 2 times a week. We do have a global remote program. I can do a brain map and neurofeedback from anywhere. So if someone is not near Colorado or lives in the mountains or something, you don't have to go anywhere. Stay in your home. I will ship everything to you and we can do it that way, that was a baby that was birthed out of COVID that, people in 2 days decided I'm never going into an office ever again. So we said, okay, then we have to meet people where they're at and create a product and a program that can be done from anywhere. The remote's going to be similar, 9 months, probably 6 to 9 months, 3 to 4 times a week, 20-minute sessions, right? So this is a very low barrier to entry, right? When we talk about fitness, right? Work out 3 times a week. Let's start with 3 times a week for 30 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. That if someone is not willing to commit that, then you're probably just not willing, you're not there yet. You know what I mean? Because when people do say things like, I just don't have time, we make time for the things that we value, period. We put finances. I was listening to a podcast yesterday and, one was talking about health and wellness and she goes, I never hear somebody say, I can't get my roots done because the economy is rough. I was like, oh, damn. That.
Those brows got to get done, girl.
Those brows got to get, those lashes got to get tinted. Yep. So it's what you're putting finance towards the things that matter to you, and really we try to make neurofeedback very cost affordable. So you're talking about probably a 6-month commitment, probably an hour and a half to 2 hours a week commitment to change your brain and to change your life.
Yeah. So what does that look like? So how are you changing their brain?
Yes.
What is the actual neurofeedback doing?
Yeah. So when someone, comes into the office or if they have the remote headset on, they'll have a headset on that has a lot of little electrodes embedded into it. Key component, there's never ever any electrical stimulus going into their brain. This is not weird shock, anything. Right. Nothing. This is not ECT. Nothing's going in. The electrodes are picking up information, monitoring and reading what the brain is doing. So electrodes pick up the electricity. And then the feedback loop of neurofeedback is the electrodes are going to pick it up. It's going to go into an amplifier. If it's remote, it's an app on your phone. And then it gets fed back to you through visual and auditory forms of reward, watching, listening. Those things are very much working as a mirror for your brain, that your brain gets to experience in real time what it's doing and training itself. For example, right, I might have someone watching a brain game, playing a brain game, or watching a show. Both of those things are very passive. So this is not something that you're coming in, and especially when we work with high achieving people, I'm going to win neurofeedback. Right. Nope, today is not, that's, you almost have to get out of your own way because it's not about your thoughts, create more theta. It's that underlying neurological pattern that's happening so automatically. That's what I'm training, what you're not even thinking about, right? So, let's say that somebody today is doing the plane games. This little plane, it goes through all these tunnels. Their brain is physically controlling how fast it's going, how much exhaust is coming out, the music going up and down, but not with thoughts, with waves. Mm-hmm. So they put the headset on, they have the phone in front of them, and I'm going to walk them through, right, how to kind of prepare for that. Take some deep breaths, get into that place. It's hard to tell people do nothing, right? Mm-hmm. But really, if I were to just say it straight, I'd be like, do nothing, just watch it, be present. You're not trying to create anything. You're not trying to make that happen. Let your brain do what it's going to do automatically and take over. So the plane, puttering along, going slowly. As the brain is doing that, they're basically experiencing either lack of reward or reward. There's no punishment. So if the screen is dark, if the plane is going slow, if the volume is low, their brain is just being told right now, that's not what I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, as human beings, we have phenomenal performance-based brains. Our brains are always looking for reward stimulus and looking for novelty, right? That if right now we heard a crash outside, automatically we would both look towards it. Not because we're like, damn, the sound of that crash was so enjoyable. It's novelty. Our brain's like, oh my God, what just happened? So things are happening in the system that we've created to be novelty. So the brain is staying engaged. And automatically it's going to fire off different wave activity in order to seek that reward. And it doesn't know what to do right away. It's very much a learning experience. So if your brain, we know your brain is producing tons of high beta all the time. Only when your brain is producing X amount of theta that I'm asking for, slower, calmer wave activity within thresholding, is it going to receive reward? But the minute it gives me even 4 hertz of microvoltage in theta, your plane speeds up, the exhaust, goes out, the music goes up. Your brain is told now through novelty reward, wait a second, yeah, that was it, keep going. And we do those things enough times over time, moving the sensors around, training different areas of the brain, that we commit those new patterns to permanency.
So this is something that's progressive throughout the process.
Yeah, nothing magic happens at 6 months, right? Yeah. If you go to the gym for 6 months, it's not like on day 600 that you're like, now I'm shredded. Today is the day I woke up and I'm jacked. It is that progressive change over time. That's also why we, take pictures of our bodies, because we might get 6 weeks in and be like, I have lost nothing. I am exactly the same. The gym sucks. Yeah. And then we look back at pictures and go, all right, girl, yeah. Right. I see a little definition. You step on the scale and you're like 5 pounds off. What's up? Okay, now I see that. But when you live in your brain every single day, sometimes it's hard to gauge that change. We're watching what the brain is producing via microvoltage every single session. So yes, we're tracking that change qualitatively, your feedback to me. We're also tracking it quantitatively, right? The actual numbers.
Yeah, so if somebody goes through this process, you see their brain change. Obviously, I imagine you guys see a lot of different types of individuals for a myriad of different challenges or problems or activity in the brain.
Yeah.
When somebody goes through the 6 to 8 months, what are they reporting? How is it affecting their quality of life or their relationships or their job?
Yeah.
What results do you guys see?
Without talking about anything specifically, right? Because we train anxiety, depression, PTSD, trauma, brain injuries, mental health related to brain injuries, all these things. I would say that, people are sleeping deeper, waking, feeling more rested, more focused. If it's somebody, especially with overstimulation, like less or no anxiety, right? That I literally have people going from, I have panic attacks regularly, to I do not remember what anxiety feels like. Having, no energy, to clean, consistent energy, right? And now this is going to span, you're exactly right, that if someone started on a 10, realistically, can we get to a 0 every single time? No. Can I get somebody down to a 3? Well, yeah. Is a 3 life-changing? Absolutely, right? Somebody who goes from, Angie, it takes me 3 hours to fall asleep, to what if you could fall asleep within 20 minutes? Right? Feel that regulation happening, get tired. So it does depend on what somebody comes in with, but across the board, we're looking for life transformation change. I'm not looking for, maybe 10%. Now, 10% would be great. We're looking for more than 10.
Yeah. When anecdotally, a lot of the individuals I've worked with, you hear this term high performers thrown around all the time, even though very few people set out to define it. And oftentimes, that comes in inability to relax. They have 3 gas pedals and no brakes.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that I've spoken with are reluctant to seek help or therapy or
they don't
what you guys do, because they feel they'll lose their edge. And I try to explain to them that this will make them far more productive in the areas that they want to be productive. So for the individual out there that might be scared to lose their edge, or maybe you can talk a little bit about the difference in at what point does high performance become self-destructive?
Yeah.
And where are people going if they continue to follow that path without an intervention? Or what are you seeing in the brains of people who don't have that brake pedal?
I actually hear this a lot, that like, well, yeah, I'm, super anxious, but that's where, I'm motivated. That's where I get stuff done. That's how I have energy. So I think about it, kind of like this, right? So if you and I, go to the gym and we both, pick up a weight, right? It's down on the ground. We both pick it up. We have both, picked up weight, right? Now, if you're doing it properly and you do a deadlift, you're going to build muscle. If I do it improperly, I'm going to throw out my back. I'm going to feel crummy. Did we both pick up a weight? Well, yeah, technically we're both doing the exact same thing. You're doing it properly. I'm doing it improperly. So yes, 2 people, you are going 100 miles an hour, right? You're getting a lot of stuff done. If you are doing it improperly, it will deteriorate you over time, right? That's where you hear about people having, heart attacks at 45, a stroke. People start to burn out, right? Think about your brain like a car. If you are driving a Ferrari, even a Ferrari is not meant to go 100 miles an hour all the time on the freeway with absolutely no, maintenance or no gas or no anything. At some point, that high-powered vehicle is going to start to burn out, right? What people don't understand is I'm not trying to take your Ferrari and make it a Kia, right? Now, there's nothing wrong with driving a Kia. That's going to get you from A to B. But if you have a Ferrari, you're never trying to trade that in, right? I'm trying to give you control of the high-powered vehicle that you're driving. And when you need to go 100 miles an hour, it should be able to have that kick. Fire it up, let's go. It also should be able to go 80 and 60 and 30. and park and shut off and then ran back up to 100. But you don't have the flexibility to do that. So right now you're just 100 miles an hour all the time, all the things. That is not maintainable for anybody. Like don't come to me with anybody at 95 going, I lived the best life going 100 miles. You didn't make it to 95.
Yeah, in training we use the metaphor that the body will compensate until the split second it can't anymore. It'll hold itself together for a long, long time. That's why people can get away with training like an asshole for years and years and years. And then the moment the one thing holding it together snaps, you have catastrophe, injury, or worse. So how is the brain compensating for our lifestyle and for our stress? And then what will that end up leading to if there isn't some intervention?
So that's where honestly people have significant cognitive decline. So one, our brains are incredible, right? We know from an athletic standpoint that your brain will give up far before your body actually needs to. So your brain truly determines if you can do something or not. If you tell yourself you can't, then you cannot. Versus if stakes were on the line, like absolutely you could, if you needed to run a marathon right now, I guarantee you any person, mind over matter, physically could do it.
Sure.
Would it be easy? No. Would it be fun? No. If it was, life or death, yeah, they could absolutely make it happen. Your brain is just telling you, that you cannot. So if you're telling your brain, we have to make this happen, we have to go, we can't sleep, all those things, your brain will rise to the occasion and match that. So your brain is incredible.
Yeah.
At some point cognitively, and I see this in brain patterns all the time, where someone comes in and they're experiencing brain fog. They are exhausted, right? All these different things. I look at their brain and their brain is producing excess delta now. Delta is excess slow wave activity. It is just like puttering out fumes, right? That you have run so hard for so long that now your brain is starting to gas out, right? And now, unfortunately, rather than if we had just done some maintenance on the front end, now we're like in a full engine repair, right?
Sure.
Okay, now we have to, push down some of this delta. We have to increase some of this. We probably, your system, right? You talk about adrenal fatigue and, all these stuff. Probably your whole body is burnt, right? You have gut issues, all these things. So now we need to put 15 different things in place versus had you realized that at, 28, 30, 35 years old versus 45, that there was an actual problem and we needed some maintenance, now we're in repair versus had we just put some things in place earlier, we could have avoided this like full system repair.
Yeah. What are things that you see that are shocking you in a lot of these
things that,
QEEGs
what shocks Angie? It's hard to shock me because I've seen so many different brain maps. I will say I see a lot of what look like physiological, like brain injuries showing up. So I do see a lot of people with excess delta who don't have a brain injury pattern. And I'll ask that because that is a common pattern of like a concussion or a TBI or something like that. And people are like, no, I've never had that. And it is either from, brain burnout. I see a lot of mold. Even here in Colorado, like mold is a very big thing, or Lyme's, things like that, where people are showing other, almost like a neurological injury. And they're showing all the symptoms of it. I did a brain map review for a young man, he was probably 28 years old, who I saw this very heavy delta pattern. I go, what's going on? Did you have a concussion history? He's like, no, didn't play contact sports, nothing like that. But all of the symptoms that he was talking about, so much fatigue, so much, oh my gosh, mental fog. I was like, oh my God. Like 2 minutes before we got off the call, he goes, you know what? I found out 6 weeks ago that I have black mold in my house and we're having to renovate. I was like,
you're hearing a lot about mold right now. You're hearing a ton about mold right now.
A lot.
Yep.
And I do believe also, some people, might be a little bit more neurologically sensitive, right? That, it depends, right? One person could live in a moldy house and they really don't show a lot of symptoms in another person, right? I believe there's also gene expression and there, we might have an underlying gene or pattern for something and it never gets expressed. Versus if we have a virus or, different things, I'm not trying to get too political, but if we have different things that can come in and then, transform and change something in our body to express those genes. And now we're hypersensitive to a lot of other things. So honestly, just, in today's world, we need to be very careful on what we're ingesting and putting in our bodies, and especially, in the day and age of like peptides for everything. And I'm a fan. I like some peptides. Know what you're doing, research what's going into your body because it can have very lasting effects in other ways and can trigger things that might have not been triggered before.
Yeah. As somebody who grew up rough and tumble kid, snowboarding accidents, bike accidents, BMX accidents, concussive blasts in the military, where are you seeing these show up and how important is this for veterans like myself or sport performance athletes, people who've car crashes, anything. Because from what I've learned is they can see this stuff all the way back from almost infancy. Like that time when you were 5 years old and you ran your bike into the mailbox, which is exactly what I did. Yeah. Go into that. How important is it that people begin to intercept this? And then what happens if they don't down the road? Where are you seeing the concussive, the impact?
Oh my gosh,
brain?
in cognition, right? And mental clarity and, your brain's ability to kind of bounce back. That I actually believe, and just anecdotally have seen, that one major, like very severe TBI is actually a lot less detrimental, depending on the severity, that's with a couple of caveats, than compounding concussions over time, right? That we see that in football players, right? You have guys who are 38 years old trying to commit suicide, who have all the money and all the things. Why is that? Because their brains are so heavily impacted, and they are so, for lack of a better term, messed up, that they don't even want to live anymore, right? They are not in control of their emotions. They're super reactive, lashing out, angry, all these things, screaming at their kids, screaming at their wife, whatever. And they're going, oh my gosh, I've literally no control over this. And then we look at their brain and they have damage in the prefrontal cortex. And I'm not even getting into white and gray matter damage. I'm just talking about surface wave activity, that their brain is so lit up with all of these other things that feels like their only option. And I've worked with a lot of these guys, whether it's, a veteran or NFL or NHL or, all these different high impact areas, first responders, right? Who, probably it's, rub some dirt in it until you can't anymore, right? Until now, wait, I have no, I'm on my 5th divorce and I have no successful relationships and I can't work, right? I might be on like medical leave because I am so unwell. But then, it's like, but technically, what's wrong, right? That, you might have a normal MRI, but you have a very abnormal QEEG. That just means you don't have a skull fracture. That doesn't mean that everything's normal.
Yeah. What are some things from your experience and what you've seen, what are some things that might actually piss some people off as far as some inconvenient truths about the brain and the mind, and or what misconceptions do you see when you open the wild jungle of social media and you see a lot of stuff that isn't proven as being strewed? What are some inconvenient truths that are hard pills to swallow for a lot of people about?
I think, well, I mean, there's a lot of hard, pills to swallow, but one is probably just that what people think that they're doing to be healthy isn't. You know what I mean? That, when you break down food, when we look at highly processed food, there's a book called Metabolical that I read, that our food and this highly processed, chemically filled food is designed to make you addicted to it, right? So you're walking around, holier than thou, that I don't do drugs, I'm so fitness, wellness, I'm all the things, and you're eating highly processed trash that your body cannot possibly digest, that's literally poisoning you over time and is, affecting your brain. So the kind of wellness trends, right, of all the different, the drinks that we drink, all these different, 50,000 million grams of protein. That will probably piss people off, that we don't need nearly as much protein as we are being fed, 200 grams a day. Get the, you don't need 200, like, stop it, right? Like, I truly have been more pressured to eat more protein, like now as an adult, that I was ever pressured to, smoke weed when I was 15. Yeah. Like, there is more pressure now to do all of these things. You don't need it, right? The carnivore, all this, like, all the meat, all the things. This is, you could argue both ways. Your body absolutely needs vegetables. It needs detoxification, that there is balance to everything. I've read a ton of plant-based diet books and a ton of, meat-based diet books. And honestly, I probably believe that the one that has heavier research is plant-based. The only diet on the planet that can reverse heart disease is a plant-based vegan diet. I'm not talking about a ton of highly processed vegan trash. I'm talking about plants and natural plant-based foods. Yeah. So, like, get the frick out of here. That's the only thing that can reverse heart disease. So that'll probably piss people off who are sitting around eating a steak for breakfast and a steak for dinner smothered in butter.
I'm triggered. Slightly.
Like, personally offend everybody. Like, get you some freaking, carnivorous cruciferous vegetables that your brain absolutely needs to detoxify.
Yeah, well, we're seeing, and people are starting to become aware of, that fiber is also a macronutrient that needs to be accounted for. Outside of strictly
Yes.
just carbohydrate, like fiber, you need so many grams of fiber per grams of protein.
Yeah, for your body to even be able to
Correct.
absorb. So there's actually a book called Fiber Fueled. It's one now. It's definitely on one side. So if you love meat and you're a carnivore, read it with the lens of like, it's actually not condemning of meat in any way. It's just like, hey, this is also why fiber and plants are incredible and treat our bodies so well and our brains so well. That's an incredible book if you're looking to actually expand your understanding.
Yeah. So if people are listening to this and they're experiencing all the very relatively normal human things of anxiety or sadness, or just maybe experiencing it a little too often, right? Because all of these things are normal.
Yeah.
What would your advice be to them as far as if they were seeking out to figure out how to get in touch with you, how this can help them? Like, what would be your recommendation? Or
we do completely free consultations. So at Braincode Centers is our Instagram, braincodecenters.com is our website. I never wanted to cost someone something to find out even what their options are, right? So doing a consultation is a great place to start, just on, let's have a conversation, right? Let's see if this even feels like a right fit for you. Also, I just am a big believer in like understanding our bodies better and who we are, right? So even if you're like, oh, neurofeedback doesn't sound right for me, do a brain map, right? That's like doing blood work before spending $500 a month in supplements, right? Like, are you just taking a very expensive pee every single day because you're a billion milligrams of magnesium and don't have any like deficiency in magnesium? Let's understand what's happening internally, neurologically, so that we can create some plans around that. And I have people do that all the time. They just want to do a brain map. They just want to understand things better so that we can create a plan and even make micro changes every day that are going to have really big impact.
Sure. So where can people find you?
At Braincode Centers, our Instagram is a great place. Follow us, DM us. I am the worst at social media, but the owner, Rachel, is fantastic. She runs the Instagram. She will DM you back right away. We can set you up for a consultation. Go peek around on our website. We have great Google reviews. We have a lot of testimonials. So don't just trust me. I mean, I have done a lot of neurofeedback for myself personally. I had a skull fracture, traumatic brain injury back in the day, and I'm truly like, kind of a beacon for your brain is capable of healing. That, my brain was unwell and I have found a lot of healing with alternative medicines. We give a lot of like brain health tips and stuff on our Instagram. Go read the testimonials. This is coming from hundreds of people who have had really life transformative change with the modality that we offer.
Yeah, and you've done a lot of speaking. You have some YouTube videos and stuff like that. So Angie Noack, obviously we're excited. We're gonna have a partnership with you guys.
Yeah.
Trying to get everything under one roof and get people the access to the resources they need. So
Heck yeah.
I appreciate the time, Angie. It was fun.
Thank you
so much.
Yes.